Hello and welcome to another SENSYS video. In this video today, I would like to demonstrate how to set up an MXV4 system, latest multi-channel device for archaeology and UXO detection. In a further video, we will talk about how to set up the software, but in this video today, it's all about the card and how to set it up. We will demonstrate the setup in two different versions for a push cart and one version to tow the device. When you get the system delivered, it comes in 3 boxes and a backpack. So we don't have the backpack here right now because we don't need it to set up the cart. What you get is a big box with the cart itself, a box which has the electronic box and the sensors, and finally a small box which has all the cables, batteries, and small parts. If you open the cart box, you see something like this, and let's unpack together what we have inside. We have 4 stabilizer struts. We have 2 wheels. And even though they look alike, they are different. So we have one wheel with holes inside and one without. This is the kickstand. We have 2 handlebars, a GPS pole. We have 2 channel extensions. And finally, we have the base frame for 5 sensors. There are more card parts in the cable box, like those small stabilizers, the wheel mounts, the odometer, as well as a spare part kit and some screws and stuff you need to mount the kickstand, for example. And all that comes together in the next step. In the first step, we mount the handlebars to the ladder. And we mount the handlebars in a way that the bolts are looking to the outside. So we put it like this. So this part looks to the inside of the cart. Here the same. The small stabilizer goes to this clamp. And then we use one of those clamps to fix that. And we repeat that with the other side. Again, make sure that you mount the handlebars in a way that the bolts are looking to the outside and that part is looking to the inside. Okay, so the next step is that we mount the kickstand. For that, we flip the cart like that. And then we have the kickstand and the 2 bolts that were in the cable box. They look like this. And what this is about, we place that notch into the mount bracket of the cart. And then we secure it with those bolts from the outside. That's the kickstand. Now we are ready to mount the wheels, and we start with a wheel that has no holes in the center, and this is mounted to the left-hand side. What we else need is the wheel mount, and we place the axle in the wheel, reattach the clamp, and then we mount it to the cart in a way that those bolts are looking down, because later when we flip the cart, they will look up. We open the other bolt and open that hinged clamp. And then we choose one mounting position. The better and more even your terrain, the higher you can mount the wheel, because then the sensors get closer to the ground. If your terrain is rather rough, then you mount the wheel to a higher position so that the distance between the sensor and the wheel and the ground is higher. So I choose something intermediate. And as a rule of thumb, mount the wheel to the outside of the frame, to the outer edge of the frame, like this. On the other side, we are going to mount the odometer. And as you can see, we have 4 bolts here that go into that 4 holes on the wheel. Again, we mount the wheel to the outside, so that means that the holes have looked towards the inside. And since we now mount the odometer, we do not need that spacer. The odometer is mounted like this, so we push it towards the wheel and fix it with that screw to the axle. And finally, we mount it to the cart. Okay, if you don't want to mount the odometer, you just use the spacer instead. You don't need the odometer necessarily as long as you use a GPS. If you don't work with a GPS on a local grid, it's highly recommended to use the odometer. The final step in setting up the cart is to mount the stabilizers. This setup we have right now is a 1 meter setup, so we are good with 2 of those stabilizers. They go from the sensor tube to one of the clamps, and this is what we are going to mount now. For that, we loosen the 2 bolts of the clamp and place the clamp between 2 of those rings. As you can see, there is a smaller spacing between the upper 2 rings, and this is where that clamp goes. So this mount is hinged, so you can mount it and move it afterwards a little. And to finalize the step, we mount it to one of the 2 clamps. You see that the holes do not match my clamp. So it doesn't harm if you loosen that here so that you can mount it to the clamp. Make sure that you put the bolt from the outside. And then you repeat that on the other side. Okay, so now we can flip the cart again, and we have our 1 meter wide cart. Before we mount anything else, we make sure that the sensors are vertical. And for that, we loosen those 2 bolts and adjust that clamp accordingly. The position of the clamps depends on the size of the operator. The goal is that the sensors are vertical if you have the cart and the handles in a very convenient position, like you would survey all the time. So this is the 1 meter wide cart, and it has 5 sensor tubes with a spacing of 25 centimeters. But there's another option of setting up that push cart by attaching these wings or extensions. By mounting them, you get a 2 meter wide cart, and you can mount 5 sensors at 50 centimeter spacing. And to mount them, you need that mounting kit, the extensions, of course, and we will use 2 additional stabilizers. The problem with that setup is that the wheelbase is much too narrow. So the cart is rather unstable. And this is why we are going to mount the wheels to the outside of the cart, which makes it way more stable. The easiest way is to just flip it again. Even though you could on the other way around as well. But since we didn't have mounted any sensors yet, any cabling, it's easy enough to just flip it over. And then we mount them here. And while it's upside down, we also mount the second stabilizer. And the idea is to stabilize the extension. So we put it on the sensor tube of the extension. And we have one clamp left, and this is where we mount the stabilizer. And again, make sure that you mount the bolt from the outside. So after we put the second wheel to the outside and mounted the second stabilizer, we can flip it again. And now we have our 2-meter wide card, very stable, stabilized with 4 struts. This is your 2-meter card, and you can mount 5 sensors at 50 centimeter spacing. So you just leave every second sensor tube empty. So the final step is to mount the GPS antenna pole. And for that, we have 2 clamps in the cable box. The ideal mounting position is the center sensor tube. So we are going to mount it here. And we have 2 clamps. One has a bolt and the other one doesn't. And that bolt goes into that hole. And the one with the bolt is the upper clamp. So that's going above that ring. So we align that little bolt to the hole and fix the clamp. It's very important to mount that above the ring because the ring is preventing the entire thing from sliding down. And then we can mount the lower clamp and put it as low as possible. And that's the assembling of the push cart. The next step would be to mount the sensors, the cabling, and the electronic box. But before we start with that, make sure that you check again whether or not the sensors are vertical in your most convenient survey position. So for me, it's long arms, not like that. If you're happy with that, we can go to the next step and mount the box. This is in this box, which we are going to open now. So the box is still its protection cover, so don't. It looks a little ugly. So you have the box, the dock for the tablet computer, the clamp, and in the second layer you have the sensors. But we start with the box. So we have the electronic box. One side has all the connectors, and the other side has some status LEDs, the power switch. And before we can mount them, we need to open the clamps. And then you just place it from the top, close the clamp, and put the bolts back in. So there's a chance that this clamp cannot be closed because of that strut. So in that case, you just move it to the back, close the clamp, and then you can move it forward again. As you can see, the box is part of the frame structure, so it's stabilizing the entire frame. Now we can mount the dock. You have 2 ball adapters. You can choose either one, depending on if you operate that with the left hand or the right hand. Then you fix the clamp. The system is ready to mount the computer. We're now going to place the sensors. Since we have a 2-meter wide card, the most meaningful configuration is to fill every second sensor tube so that we have a sensor spacing of 50 centimeter. If you have more sensors, the box supports up to 16. You can, of course, use more sensors. The final step would be cabling the system. So for the cabling, you have sensor cables in the cable box. They come in different lengths, so you have to figure out which one is the best for which channel. And after you figured that out, you can mark them according to your needs. They have a like a rubber sleeve, which needs to be either crumbled back or just pulled back. And one important rule when cabling the box is the sequence of the sensors. The rule is that sensor number 1 is always the first to the left looking in moving direction. So my moving direction is this way. I push it in this direction, and therefore my sensor number 1 is this. So this channel has to be cabled to channel number 1 at the box. To connect the cable to the sensor, you align that little nose to the notch in the sensor connector. And the way you connect that, after you have aligned that, you wiggle and then screw. And wiggle, screw. Don't try to screw all the time because this is very hard. And you do that until it doesn't go any further. And once the connection is fixed, you just put the sleeve back on so that it is covering the connector and the upper part of the sensor, like that. So this connection is rainproof. So we started with sensor number 5, and consequently we have to connect to channel number 5, which is here. So you align the nose from the connector to the notches of the socket, and then you rotate that little handle until it clicks. So once we connected all the sensors to the cables and to the box, we are having all kind of loose cables, which we cannot tolerate. Everything that is conductive and that's moving in the Earth magnetic field is inducing a current and therefore a magnetic field, which of course will be catched up by the sensors. We call that noise, and that has to be avoided. And the best way to avoid that is to fix the cable very firmly to the card so that they cannot move. In order to achieve that, we have those bungee cords which are coming with the device, and these are used to fix the cables to the card. Another thing we have to take care of is fixing the sensors to the card, because they're quite loose in the sensor tube. And we can do both at the same time, fixing the cable and the sensor to the card. And we use that bungee cord, catch that cable, put it around the sensor, cross it around the sensor tube, and then pull it tight and close it until it clicks. So now the sensor is pulled to the backside of the sensor tube and the cable is fixed. And we continue doing it like that with all the other sensors. So we do the same thing with the second sensor, but opposed to the first one, we catch the first sensor cable and fix it with the second sensor. So we catch the cable, go around the sensor, make sure that the cable from the neighbor sensor is underneath the bungee cord. Then we cross it around the sensor tube, put it tight and fix it. So now we have the sensor fixed as well as the cable. Best practice is to start from the outside and move to the inside. Put the cables straight along the beams, and if you have some extra cable, make sure that you coil it up close to the box instead of here close to the sensors, because this is a coil, and moving that through the Earth magnetic field will produce a lot of noise. So make sure it is away from the sensors. And that concludes our setup video for the pushcart. The next step would be to attach the computer and set up the software, which will follow in another video. What we did not take care of is the GPS receiver, which goes on top of here. And of course, it also has a cable which has to be tightened very close to the card. and that's connected to the GPS port, which is here.